Today is Saturday, October 21st. If you've spent weeks or months planning a vacation, is it ethical to still go on your trip after a natural disaster like a wildfire or hurricane? What about when you're deciding where to book your next trip? And if you have to cancel, how can you recoup the costs? Plenty of people have been put in this type of position after the devastating wildfires in Maui, earthquakes in Morocco and Turkey, hurricanes in Florida, and so on. And even now, as many places allow tourists back in, it's controversial during recovery. So today, we're talking about the things to consider before you decide whether to stay or go, and what you can do before and during a trip to be a responsible traveler or save money if you can't go. Here to offer all that advice is our guest expert, Clint Henderson. He's the managing editor of The Points Guy, the popular website focused on helping people travel better, spend smarter, and explore further. He's also a frequent traveler himself who has visited more than 50 countries so far. Welcome to the Newsworthy Special Edition Saturday, when we sit down with a different expert or celebrity every Saturday to talk about something in the news. Don't forget to tune in every Monday through Friday for our regular episodes, where we provide all the day's news in 10 minutes. I'm Erica Mandy. It's now time for today's Special Edition Saturday. Clint Henderson, thank you for joining us here on the Newsworthy.
Thanks for having me.
So I do want to talk about the logistics, but before we get there, what would you say are the ethics of traveling to a location after there has been a natural disaster? And at least generally speaking, do you think travelers should still go?
So generally, I think travelers should still go. Here's the primary reason. The primary reason is a lot of places that tourists like to go are dependent on those tourists for their economic well-being. So if you talk to some folks in Hawaii, they will never ask tourists to come back. They don't want tourists to come back. So it's always a fine line, and it's going to depend on who you ask. But in general, most people in a destination want the tourist dollars. They just want responsible tourism.
Yeah, and that's a good point. I mean, there are parts of West Maui that are technically open for tourism again. And yet, thousands of people, locals, signed a petition to delay the reopening or saying they don't want it. So when you hear news, what's your advice to the traveler who feels conflicted?
I would say to the traveler who feels conflicted that they really need to have a plan to do something to give back to the locals, whether that's buying local, using local tour guides, supporting local business owners as opposed to national chains. So in other words, I think of the classic example is an American tourist who goes to Paris, hangs out on the Champs-Élysées, and eats at McDonald's. That's not the kind of tourist that most destinations want these days. Doing something like volunteering, because there's a lot of destinations that now offer volunteer opportunities for visitors. So as long as you have a plan to give it back in some form or fashion, even after a natural disaster, I think you're well served and the locals are well served as long as you're bringing those tourist dollars, which the economic recovery is really going to rely on.
And I imagine what you just talked about may play into this, but how would you define responsible tourism? What does that look like?
Unfortunately, the rise of Instagram has also meant the rise of really bad behavior at times. And you combine that with a natural disaster, and it's no wonder locals get sick of it. We heard stories of people taking selfies in front of fire-ravaged communities. That's the kind of stuff that you should not be doing as a tourist, and that gives all tourists a bad name. So there's got to be some balance there. Just treat people locally how you would want to be treated. Would you want someone coming to your neighborhood and posing in front of a burned out building as if that represented the entire community? No. So you really got to do the golden rule when you're traveling and do the same as you would want to be treated. And, you see these stories of people defacing monuments in Rome or Paris, and it's just really bad behavior. And that's the kind of thing that creates a reverse halo for all tourists. So you really want to avoid that kind of behavior.
Do you suggest doing a certain amount of research? And if so, where are the best places to look before you go somewhere in terms of etiquette and behavior?
You'll find plenty of guidelines with a simple Google search. Of course, websites like The Points Guy have great resources for most destinations. So our sister publication, Lonely Planet's another really good resource for people to use. There's plenty of information out there, but I think a lot of this is common sense. So you would urge people just to use their own common sense.
All right, let's talk logistics now. If a natural disaster, so a hurricane, wildfire, earthquake, that sort of thing, hits your travel destination within days of your trip, what is the first thing travelers should do?
The first thing you should do is ask yourself the question, should I really be there right now? Am I going to interfere with rescue efforts? Am I going to interfere with recovery efforts? And if the answer is yes, then you need to cancel that trip. Now, fortunately, most airlines, most hotels, Airbnb, et cetera, are very good at working with people with reservations in areas that have been hit by natural disasters. We saw this again in Hawaii, where hotels and Airbnbs and airlines were giving refunds or flight credits and refunding people's money, so they weren't adding to the burden of the local population with trips at the last minute. So that's the first thing you need to do, is make sure that you're not going to be causing problems. My advice immediately after the Maui wildfires was, if you had a trip in the next few weeks, you should cancel it. Otherwise, you should wait and see. Remember that airlines, if they end up canceling your flight, they're going to give you a full refund. And so sometimes it makes more sense anyway just to wait to see what happens, because sometimes if the airline is going to proactively cancel, you're going to end up with a full refund as opposed to a flight credit or a voucher. So wait and see is the best advice I can give. If it's a situation where there's a war or it's obvious that it's not a great time to go, then you need to be a little bit more proactive and cancel those things on your own. But reach out to whoever you booked the trip through, because if you booked via third party, that's who you're going to have to contact for cancellations and refunds. That's why at the Points Guy, we always recommend to people that they book direct. We found this a lot during COVID, that people had a lot of trouble getting through to third party booking sites when they were trying to cancel trips during the pandemic. And so we always say book direct with the airline, book direct with the hotel. That way you know who you're dealing with if something goes sideways.
Is there a difference at all between a natural disaster and something less natural, like a terrorist attack?
So a natural disaster and a terror attack are similar in that they're beyond the control of the airline, the hotel. And so when it comes to cancellations and delays, the airlines and hotels actually have a lot of wiggle room when it comes to that. So they don't always have to give you a refund. But I do find that whether it's terrorism or natural disasters, airlines, hotels are generally good at refunding people, at making people whole. So they sort of act the same, but there's some strange circumstances with both of them, which will determine how folks end up getting refunds and whether insurance covers the trip. So a lot of times you'll see with cancel for any reason insurance, that would cover you in both natural disasters and in terrorism or acts of war. But when it comes to regular just travel insurance, sometimes they would not cover you for trip delays and cancellations. So it really depends on the issuer, what credit card company is offering it, if you booked with a credit card or the insurance policy. It really depends on the policy.
Still ahead, is buying a travel insurance policy really worth the money? Plus, how to utilize your credit card to save money if your trip goes sideways, and the important documents and phone numbers you always want to have on hand. But first, a quick break for our sponsors. AG1 has become part of my daily routine. It's the daily foundation nutrition supplement that means I don't have to take a ton of different pills every day. It can replace a daily multivitamin, probiotic, and more. It's just a single solution that supports my entire body. I wanted better gut health, a boost in energy, and immune system support, and I love that I get all that with one scoop of AG1 mixed with water. Well, I like to add ice and a splash of lemon juice a lot of the times, and then I'm good to go. It's easy to drink and easy to make part of my regular routine. I also appreciate how hydrating it is first thing in the morning. I like to drink it before I've even had breakfast, and it really sets me up to feel great and be ready to take on the day. If you're looking for a simpler, effective investment for your health, try AG1 and get 5 free AG1 travel packs and a free 1-year supply of vitamin D with your first purchase. Go to drinkag1.com/newsworthy. That's drinkag1.com/newsworthy. Check it out. This episode is also brought to you by Trust and Will. At this time in my life, with a toddler and getting ready to move into a new home, I'm trying to really appreciate all the joyful moments these big life milestones bring. But here's the thing. We can sometimes forget one crucial detail: securing our family's future. And for good reason. Traditional estate planning can cost thousands of dollars and feel really complex. That's where Trust and Will comes in. I was so pleasantly surprised at how simple it was for my husband and I to create our will. We did it from the comfort of our home. The website is very user-friendly, and the whole process is straightforward. No wonder Trust and Will has earned an overall rating of excellent with thousands of 5-star reviews on Trustpilot. Gain peace of mind today with Trust and Will. Get 10% off plus free shipping of your estate plan documents by visiting trustandwill.com/newsworthy. That's 10% off and free shipping at trustandwill.com/newsworthy. Okay, now back to our conversation. What considerations should we be thinking about when you book the trip? So you can use, cash, credit card, or points. What are the differences there when something like this happens?
So at the Point Scale, we tell people always book with a credit card that offers trip delay and cancellation protections. Most of the really high-end credit cards do offer that, and they're going to protect you over cash. So you might as well use a card that also gives you points and gives you a little insurance protection. However, when it comes to wars or natural disasters, some of these policies don't cover everything. So generally, though, they will cover you in the event that the trip is delayed or cancellation. There's some act of God language in some of these policies, so you have to read it carefully. But I always say you might as well get the insurance as a backup just in case. So always better to pay with a credit card. The interesting thing is, if you're paying with points, if you're paying for the taxes and fees on a credit card, they will cover your trip, even if just some of the purchase is done with the credit card.
Are there any other tricks or tips to know to have a better chance of getting your money back when something like this happens? Or is the answer maybe just postponing instead of canceling?
I think you'll find in natural disasters and wars, in both situations, the airlines, the hotels, they will work with you. And I think it can never hurt to ask, just directly, just say, hey, I don't want to go right now. I'm worried about this. Sometimes they'll just give you an outright refund. Sometimes they will give you a voucher or let you change the dates for free. That's what we're finding a lot of times in natural disasters that have happened, and also in the war in Israel. Airlines were very flexible with passengers and often will be in natural disasters. So it can never hurt to ask. If you're not getting the answer you want to hear, you can talk to your credit card company about the insurance they have on your trip. And, worst case scenario, what we were telling people at the end during the coronavirus pandemic was, look, tell your credit card that you didn't get the service that you paid for with the credit card. Sometimes the credit card companies will work with you to take those charges off your bill as well.
And do you recommend buying trip insurance?
I personally do not buy insurance on my trips because I book with a credit card that offers travel insurance and protection. I do find that a lot of those add-on insurance policies that they offer don't cover a lot of things. So there's lots of wiggle room in the terms and conditions. The one exception to that I would say is cancel for any reason insurance. If you are a nervous traveler and, especially if you're worried about a region that could be susceptible to a war, cancel for any reason insurance sometimes will give you peace of mind. It's really expensive. That's why I don't ever do it. But for some people, the peace of mind is worth it.
Okay, so what if something happens like a big storm during your trip? How can travelers best prepare in case of that scenario? And what do they do in the moment?
If you're in an area that's hit with a natural disaster, you're going to have to go to the local embassy if you're traveling internationally, or talk to your hotel if you're staying domestically somewhere, and talk to local officials about what to do next. Because it may be stay exactly where you are, don't try to move, or it may be we're adding evacuation flights. The possibilities are really endless. So you're really going to have to pay attention to local leaders or the U.S. Embassy in those situations.
Any must-have emergency documents or supplies for every trip?
So you always want to have physical copies of your ID. I always like to have as well a physical copy of my emergency contact. So I have a paper printout of my passport and my driver's license just as a backup. I also keep a list of emergency phone numbers with me. Finally, I would say take a picture of your passport or your ID, have that in your phone. Know the local numbers, so know local emergency services. You'll find a lot of places in the world, 911 will put you in touch with the police and fire. That's true in America. That's true in a lot of other countries, but it's not the same everywhere. So you should know the phone number for emergency services. And finally, know the consulate or embassy phone number of the country you're going to. You just want to have that. Just have it handy just in case.
Any final thought or takeaway as we think about how to respectfully travel to these areas that have been impacted?
Please use common sense. Don't be that person there's a story about because they did a selfie in front of an ancient relic and ruined it.
Well, thank you so much to Clint Henderson for sharing his insights. For more travel tips, airline and hotel reviews, and information about credit card points and miles, check out thepointsguy.com. Well, thank you for listening to this special edition Saturday episode. We'll be back on Monday with our regular daily news roundups in about 10 minutes. But until then, if you're looking for another podcast to listen to this weekend, check out The Jordan Harbinger Show. It's won a bunch of podcast awards for good reason. I know Jordan personally, and he is a great interviewer. He goes in depth with all types of fascinating guests, like the conversation he had with an undercover FBI agent who builds relationships with potential terrorists, or another episode that tells the story of a cinematographer who discovered a lost city in the jungle and made one of the most important archaeological finds of the century. He's also had more well-known names on the show, from Matthew McConaughey and Ludacris to LinkedIn founder Reid Hoffman and more. Jordan has a gift for getting his guests to reveal never-been-heard-before stories and insights so we can all learn from their unique superpowers. He also has other helpful types of episodes like how to quit your job the right way. So go check it out. Search The Jordan Harbinger Show. That's Harbinger, H-A-R-B as in boy, I-N as in Nancy, G-E-R. Wherever you listen to podcasts, add it to your playlist for After the Newsworthy when you need something to listen to that's longer than 10 minutes. We hope you love it. Okay, again, we'll be back on Monday to get you updated on the news you need to know to start your week. For now, have a great weekend.